real cases before a real judge.
Plaintiff David Jenkins Sr. says the defendant, his son, was born when he was 21 years old. But instead of being a good father, he turned to the streets and started selling drugs. David claims he turned his life around after spending 5 years in prison, and he's suing his son for the cost of a car. Defendant David Jenkins Jr. says as a result of his father not being there, he was raised in an abusive group home and ended up turning to the streets as well. David says he loves his father despite the fact that he never really knew him, and he's countersuing for emotional distress.
Start with you.
Your Honor, I'd like to give you a little background on my history. I was 21 when I had Dave Jr. I wasn't the best father. I spent a lot of time in the streets from Chicago. Did a lot of things, try to make some fast money. I wanted to sell drugs, and I wanted to hang out, try to be a ladies' man, and instead of being a father.
Did you have parents?
Yes, I had
Mother and
my
father?
mother.
No father?
No father, and it was 10 of us. And so we had to get out in the streets to make something happen.
What was the peer group in your community like? Were they upstanding choir boys?
No, sir.
What were you surrounded by in terms of young people?
I was surrounded by dope dealers, players, prostitutes, robbers.
And gangbangers.
And gangbangers, yes. I had to fight to go to school because I stayed in a different area from the different gangs that was in the school in the area.
Either you're a predator or you're prey. That's how it was in my neighborhood. So that kind of put you out there in the streets and then you never made it back.
No, sir.
Hopefully, recently you made it back at some point.
Yes, sir.
All right, but go ahead and tell me what your life was like.
I neglected the kids, and I continued to stay in the streets. A lot of things I did out there I'm not proud of,
To
Your
go
Honor.
to prison?
Yes, I did.
How
Went
long?
to prison 2003, got out in 2008. At which time, while I was in prison, I decided I was tired of that life. And I got my GED while I was in there. I went to college.
You went to college while you were there?
Yes, I did. Got a few credits while I was there to become a motivational speaker.
Good.
Defendant David Jenkins Jr. says the plaintiff is his father, but he was never there for David because he chose the streets and a life of crime over being a dad.
So since '08, you've been out of trouble?
Been out of trouble. I've been trying to be part of my son's life to rebuild the relationship with my son and my grandkids. You know, it's just
All right, let me hear from him before we get to the car you're suing him about. Sir?
I would like to start out by saying, Your Honor, I love my father to death.
Good.
Everyone who knows, and he knows. I mean, I don't call him dad because, you know, I don't really know him. He hasn't been there for me. I mean, my mom left me in Chicago here when I was 8 years old in a hotel and moved back to Minnesota. My mom's side of the family took in my brother. My sister's stepdad took her in, and I was left to a group home. So as I'm in a group home with a pastor and a co-pastor, I had a weak bladder when I was younger, so I had problems urinating on myself when I was sleeping. They made me sleep in the tub. They locked me in the basement. All this different stuff that I wish my father would have been there for, because had he had been there, I wouldn't have been in that predicament, because he would have took care of me. I mean, I feel like we're two peas in a pod, that this is my AKA best friend from the time that I actually got to know him a little bit.
When did you get to know him?
Shortly after he got out of prison, I looked him up. He didn't look me up. I mean, my oldest son, he calls him his other granddad. He doesn't call him Papa like my daughter does or anything like that, because he doesn't really know my children. The only one he knows is my daughter. And that's because that's the one whose life he's been in the last few years.
You been in the street before?
Yeah, I did turn to the streets. And the reason I turned to the streets is because, like I said, I didn't have my mom or dad there. And I wanted to know what was so special about the streets that my dad left me for. And it wasn't worth it. To me, anyways.
You out of the street, obviously?
Yes, sir.
All right. Did you? Many guys in the street still provide and stay in the home with their children. Were you a father to your children?
Yes, Your Honor, I was.
You were still a father?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
I mean, every day I'm there. Every night I change their diapers. I bathe them. I mean, I wouldn't be in the street all night like most people.
Right.
I would be out there during certain hours and then go take care of my family.
All right. So
that's what I did because my kids mean more to me than myself.
So you were good. You know how to move and get out of there.
Yes, sir.
Ain't nothing to clap about. I'm talking about how he was a good thug. I say you were good because you know how to get in there and then get on back home. And y'all talking about, yeah. Well, I'm glad you never lost your way with your kids. It sounds like you still have a little animosity there or resentment.
Not really so much animosity. I mean, and I don't resent anything because without things the way it went, I would have been a spoiled little brat when I grew up. Because, I mean, I was a freshman in high school when I was 12 years old. I was on an A+ honor roll for 4 years straight.
And you went through all that.
Well, my mom and dad, what turned my life around at the beginning to make me go the way I went is because I was told by my mom and dad that they would be at my 8th grade graduation. Neither one was there. Wow. So at that point, I stopped caring. Why should I care if y'all don't?
Parents, you hear that? Yeah. If you don't care about your kids' schooling, they won't either. You just heard it. Go ahead.
So from there, I ended up turning to some people on the north side of Chicago. And literally, I seen my first body when I was 9 years old. I was sleeping in an abandoned building because I had nowhere else to go. And it was a blanket in the corner. And I grabbed the blanket and covered up with it. Woke up in the morning, there was a body there. And I've been to prison myself. It wasn't for anything I'd done, it was for not telling on someone else who did do something. And that's what turned my life around, because as I'm in prison, everybody's telling me how much I look like my dad, how much I think like him, how much I talk like him, how much I move like him, and that's not me. Street guys knew him from having been there himself. And let's get to the car you're suing about.
Your Honor, I have 1995 Cadillac Sedandeville I had.
See it, please.
This is me and my son in 2010. We went out and had a...
Pimpin' ain't dead. Some of them just scared.
Defendant David Jenkins Jr. says the plaintiff is his father, but he was never there for David because he chose the streets and a life of crime over being a dad.
Go ahead.
The Cadillac in question. I had been trying to get rid of the Cadillac. I wanted to sell it. And my son wanted to purchase it from me. So instead of trying to ask for $3,500, I said, I'll knock $1,000 off and I'm gonna give you a, give you a plan where you can pay me $100 a month. This way you won't hurt yourself, and I'm trying to work with you, you work with me, and in a few months, and a little bit over a year, we had this paid off. And I just decided I wanted to do a promissory note.
Okay, good. Let's see it, please. Okay. And how much has he paid toward this?
No payments.
All right. Sir?
Well, Your Honor, I feel like I don't owe my father for this vehicle because when we first talked about the vehicle, there was never any speak of a price at all until I came to pick the vehicle up. That's when the price came up. And then I felt insulted that you would even bring up a price or a promissory note, being that, I'm not asking for anything. I have my own company.
So why didn't you just refuse it?
The reason I didn't refuse it is because I know had the shoe been on the other foot, my father would have done the same thing.
Same thing as in?
As in not pay me for the vehicle. Because he would have figured I'm his son, it's owed to him.
And so you signed it?
Yes, I did.
Intending to defraud him?
Not so much as defraud as, literally, I didn't think we would get to this point. I figured, I love my father, you know what I mean? He knows that I've had a rough life, he's had a rough life. But at the same time, I didn't ask for my life. I just live it. Now, my father, I didn't think he would bring me here for this vehicle. I figured he would have said, you know what, you're my son, I haven't done much for you, so here's a gift, just forget it. But it hasn't been that. And my daughter's been hurting more than anybody because of it.
How?
Because, my dad would come over and sit in a chair, and she would sit there for 3 hours, just sit on his lap. She won't do that for me.
How does that hurt things? It sounds like it's something you would want.
He ain't around her no more.
Oh, I got you, because of this.
He hasn't seen her since then.
Yes.
All right, because of this dispute.
Yeah.
Well, the good news is we're going to resolve this today. And you can go back over tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Your counterclaim for emotional distress, $4,000. How does he owe you?
Like I said, my whole life I've had to turn to gangs, I've had to turn to streets, and most of the time that I turn to all these different things, it's because my dad is my best friend. He has been since I was a kid. But I want to know what was so great about it. And all it did was end up me hurt, me messed up in my head. I mean, I have a good heart. Everyone knows I have a good heart. But sometimes I'm just misguided in my thoughts because I didn't have the man there. All I had was gangs or prostitutes or pimps or whatever to try to teach me in the way they know. Now, me, up until the time that I graduated from school, I had never been in trouble. Like, I've done everything I was supposed to do to try to keep my family together and bring my family back together, which didn't happen.
When did you go to prison?
I went to prison in 1999 to 2003.
When did you have children?
I had my first child in 1997.
And you went to prison on your child?
Yes, I did.
Just like he did?
Yep.
Did they get over it?
My son, actually, I do any and everything I can.
So he's
to
gotten
make up
over
for
it?
Yes, he has. So has I. I mean, I forgive my father for everything.
All right, don't sound like it. Sounds like you're still using that to explain away your destructive lifestyle.
And you know what, Your Honor? I accept responsibility for everything I've done in my life because my dad didn't push me to do any of it.
There you go.
But at the same time, under different leadership, I would be something more than what I am
Now,
now.
if y'all were living in that tough era, you might not. He might have still been trying to drink his problems away, drink his fear away, smoke his fear away, smoke his problems away, smoke the pain away of poverty, of failed education. There are many reasons this happens. It's not anything that he probably wanted to do. Right. He's probably a little weaker than he should have been, but all of us fall prey. I was weaker than I should have been while I was out there, fell victim to it. Don't blame my father. I only saw him 30, 40 days in my entire life, so I don't blame him for not being there. I blame myself for wanting to be down. I wanted to be in those streets. So don't let that be a hindrance, and don't use that to hinder the relationship that you all have, and don't use that to keep from paying him the money you owe him, more importantly.
Yes, sir, and I do understand that, and I agree with that 100%.
And I just, as you are probably demonstrating, the overwhelming majority of those who are raised without a father, black, white, Latino, or whatever, get in trouble.
Defendant David Jenkins Jr. says the plaintiff is his father, but he was never there for David because he chose the streets and a life of crime over being a dad.
So fatherhood has a lot to do with what happens with young men. Young men need to learn manhood from their father. Otherwise, they'll learn a twisted sense of manhood on the street. Their mothers can teach them and do the best they can in showing them how to be young men, but they've never been men, so they don't know how to handle a circumstance that a young man is presented with on the street. They've never been a man. So that's part of it. So the hope is that you all are now helping to steer and mentor some other young men who don't have fathers. You doing that?
I actually, I have a pastor in the church in Minnesota who has me talk to children that's been in similar predicaments or don't have their parents like they should, because for me to be where I was to where I am now is not only a miracle, but it's the works of God.
There you go, and you got to pass it on.
Since I was 15.
Twice,
so,
yeah. All right. Well, when you get blessed, you got to pass it on to the rest.
That's
Judgment for the plaintiff. They'll claim you.
Excuse me, Judge Mathis. Excuse me. My barber shop. Want you to have this here.
What's the name of your barber shop?
VIP, my barber shop.
All right, let me have it, please,
It's a VIP for you when you come to Minnesota. Haircut that works.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
I just want to say, son, I love you. And, you know, I'm glad to have this behind us because I miss you. And I want to be with you, man. And, you know, I just want to let you know I love you.